You answer more questions or provide more solutions in your business. Hello, my name is Bob Seebohar. I am the owner of Energy Performance. I'm a sport dietitian, exercise physiologist, coach, endurance coach, and mentor to younger health and nutrition professionals. Now, I want to get into the topic of questions versus solutions today. So, as a health professional, you likely are very good at answering questions because we have a lot of knowledge. We go to school, we develop our trade. Fantastic, right? And additionally, if you tell someone what you do, oh, hey, I'm a sport dietitian, they're going to ask you questions about that is of interest to them, right? So it's kind of part of the trade. We know this, right? It happens in every trade, by the way, but just talking about health and nutrition professionals, I want to segment the whole questions versus solutions because when I hear a lot of younger health and nutrition professionals getting frustrated, getting burned out, it's usually because they don't have their system set up well enough in their businesses to really deal with questions and solutions. And they may just not even know. Like it, so you're probably watching this video like, what is this guy talking about, right? Here's a great example. In my world, I have a lot of athletes asking me questions. Okay, well, I also have developed solutions so I can counteract these questions. And I'll tell you why strategically we're doing that. But let me just give an example really quick. If an athlete comes up to me and says, hey, I'm wondering if I should take creatine as a supplement. That is a question. I can easily answer that very easily, right? I have a little discussion with them first to put it in context, but I can easily answer that question. Or I can actually push that question into providing a solution for them. So my solution is something that I've created called the optimal nutrition system, right? It's a tiered shape or a tiered-based system. It goes through talking about physiological biomarker testing, foundation nutrition, nutrient timing, then supplements. So supplements is actually the last thing I talk about when I talk to athletes, right? So can I easily answer the question? Yes, absolutely. But that question will lead to more questions, which will lead to more questions and more and more and more, right? If you're doing your job, you're developing trust, healthy relationship with that person. Now, is that a bad thing? Possibly. Because here's the thing. If you are a small business owner, your job is to make money, right? Nobody's paying you. You're not getting a salary. So when you're just answering questions that are not billable hours, meaning every hour you spend, every minute you spend talking to someone, it is billable, right? Whether you bill it or not is totally up to you, but it is billable, right? So an athlete comes up to me and says, hey, Bob, I'm thinking about taking creatine. What do you think? In my mind, I'm like, okay, I can give a very quick answer like yes or no. Knowing that those are billable hours, I can tell them, additionally, I can say, that's a kind of a complex answer because there's so many things it depends on. I would love to set up a time to meet with you 30, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, hear my rates, right? You can kind of help them along because something like that kind of question, that answer is going to require a little bit more time and you don't want to be taking advantage of with your time resource. So you can certainly provide them the opportunity to pay you for that. Or you can step back and say, looking at the big picture, you're asking about creatine, but first we need to actually see maybe what biomarkers are going on in your body. If you have nutrient deficiencies, then I need kind of a better idea of how you eat throughout the day, if you're controlling blood sugar, if you're periodizing your nutrition. And then we obviously need to talk about your training nutrition. What are you doing before, during, and after training and competition? Because all of those things, athlete who is asking me the question about creatine, all of those things will actually affect the answer that I give you, whether or not creatine is right for you or not. So it's kind of unfair for me just to give you an answer without knowing a lot of that context. So right there, what I did was I turned the question into more of a solution-based response. And now that solution-based response will warrant them signing up for some type of program or hourly rate with me because I'm providing a solution to their challenge, a solution to their problem, not just a question that will obviously domino into more questions down the road. Because if you answer the question great, which you will, you're a great health and nutrition professional, they'll want to ask you more questions. But if you give them the solution, then you can get them as a client, right? And listen, I am not splitting hairs on, if you just want to help someone out, great. But remember this as a small business owner, because I hear this from so many of my young mentees who are like, God, how do I make it in business? How do I make money? Well, you need to stop saying yes all the time and stop just answering questions, right? You need to develop your systems, you need to develop your solutions. So remember again, answering questions is fine, right? But just remember, if you can actually provide a solution to the challenge or the problem your client is looking for, number one, you've just increased your stock. You've increased the value that you're providing them, and you will most likely have a client for life, because what they've done is, by you diverting them from question to solution, you've actually shown them that you care more about them and about their health, their fitness, their longevity, their performance, because you're packaging it into a whole educational process and that you want to guide them with. It's not just, oh, let me answer your question. It's you're kind of welcoming them into your system, into your solution, into your business. And as a smart business owner, you want to be able to provide resources and high value resources so you can keep that client for a very long time. Okay, so I hope that answers the question. No, it wasn't a question, right? But kind of shed some light on, should you just answer questions, or you should actually be providing solutions? Now, I think the answer is pretty straightforward. There is a time and a place. I won't argue with this. There is a time and a place to answer questions. I feel like if I'm speaking to a group, if I'm in a presentation, I do answer questions, but here's the trick. I'm answering the questions knowing that I'm trying to implement a solution to that person. So I do this all the time when I speak at presentations or conferences or whatever to teams. I get all these questions, and then during the presentation, then afterwards, they'll come up to me and say, oh, you know what? I asked that question, but I had another question. That's going to happen, right? And I know that's going to happen. So I actually want them to come up to me afterwards, because I want the opportunity to develop a somewhat trusting relationship with them and to introduce my solution. Okay, so there's great ways around, and it's nothing sketchy. You are literally acting as a small business owner who needs to make a career, needs to make money, needs to provide, right? But also wants to provide high value services and education and help to those who want it. So we're kind of on a little balance beam here, right? We need to stay up there, and we need to develop more solutions and right time, right place for answering questions. Put it in context. Use the answering questions strategically, but don't always answer questions. Now, again, just before we leave here, don't purposely say, no, I can't answer your question. I mean, that's a little rude, right? But you can answer their question a little bit more superficial and kind of bring them into your solution, just like the creatine example, right? That's a great example of doing it, a great way of doing it, in saying, I can answer this question, but I need to get a lot more specific, and that would take a lot more time. And that's when you're introducing them to your solution. Okay, so that said, hopefully you learned a little bit more about questions versus solutions. Thanks for watching.